TOA, Fit Body Forever, and Fit Body Bootcamp communities. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Robert Linkul with TrainingTheOlderAdult.com and your Director of Education with Fit Body Bootcamp. Today, we are going to dive into release drills or release lifts. This comes from a chapter of the NSCA and Human Kinetics collab book called Developing Power, as you see on screen there. And I was lucky enough to be asked to participate and contribute to chapter number 4, which is, training older adults for power. It's kind of a combo chapter that's adapting power training to special populations. And a colleague of mine, he focused on, Rodri Lloyd focused on power training for youth, and mine was on older adults. And so you can check that out. My section starts on page 97. Very excited. I had about 13, 14 pages of content in there. It's a pretty solid book, and we're going to show you a couple of pieces of that in here now and talk about, eventually, specifically, release lifts. And I'll show you a couple videos and a little outtake from one of my presentations that I've recently given, but also just the development of power and why developing power is so important. In just a real basic understanding of power output and development and why the aging body needs that, this is a very solid example, is just observing and watching older, deconditioned people walk. When they walk, they take rather small steps, and they usually have their arms out to their side, and they look like kind of like a kid pretending to be an airplane. And the reason for that is they don't have the stability in their legs to take long enough strides, number one, but even just stable short strides, number two. So they put their arms out, much like a wire walker would, hold their stick to help them kind of balance and coordinate and use that leverage. That's similar to what they're doing with spatial awareness of their arms out to the side, but their arms are also counterweights for them as they walk. And you will see that quite often in older pops because they are so unstable. They're searching for any outreach, any connection that's going to give them a better, stable approach. So when we get into the weight room and we kind of focus on the adaptation of some of these strategies to produce more power for our aging pops, it's to do that. Number one, to build the strength the strength high enough to allow for longer strides to be taken, because they don't have the strength to do it now. That's why they don't do it. So simply asking people to take longer steps is not a good approach. You want to build strength into longer strides, where we work with different gait steps and then eventually lunges and then drop steps and then step ups, and kind of build that, progressively. And then number two, power production is, as they are able to take bigger steps, they need to be able to do so with a faster twitch reaction. This is a neuromuscular switch that goes off in your brain that goes, I've taken a step, it's too short of a step, I'm starting to tumble, I need to throw my foot out in front of me quickly to stop this fall, to rescue this fall. But if I can't do that long enough and or quick enough, I'm gonna either accelerate my fall or just simply allow the fall to occur. So if we can build a good base level of strength, but then also a reactive, dynamic, explosive kind of component to teach the type 2 muscle fibers to fire and respond quickly, then this is a good thing. And ultimately will prevent our falls. But if we're going to just try to do that by saying like just move faster, that won't really work. We need to apply it some way. So some of the first ways to do this, and these were early on approaches, were through these pneumatic or hydraulic based training devices. And this was Nautilus and Cybex and a couple of the early companies. I believe Nautilus and Cybex both had parts, or one of them had parts of the original pneumatic machine that NASA used to build strength and bone density in their astronauts while in space. Well, basically it's isokinetic type of training where there's pressure and resistance in both directions. So if I were to push on two levers, gas pressure would make that tough. Gas pressure as I would row it back. Push it and pull it, and push it and pull it. And basically work through, come on, babe, you're good. Basically would work through those ranges of motion under constant tension. So you're not wasting, number one, half of your movement, but number two, you're working really good agonist-antagonist comparisons back and forth. So it's super efficient and it's rather equal in development. And those work well, and they do give you some, decent muscular development, et cetera. There's a lot of concentric focus in that, as there's always a agonist driving the movement, the antagonist on the other side working for stability. So as we kind of progress a little bit further into this, you look at these hydraulic movements and you go, okay, these are good movement patterns, but they're fixed. Let's continue to work these movement patterns, but unfix them. So that's where you see free weight training starts to kind of become a better approach. Maybe in the beginning we use some selectorized machines or some hydraulics and pneumatic machines, et cetera. And then we build into some free weights where we give our lifters the potential to move entry level 40% of a 1 rep maximum, rather experienced lifters upwards of 80% of their 1 rep maximum. Some dynamic, explosive movement type patterns, horizontal push and pull, vertical push and pull, hinging, squatting, splitting, etc. As we continue to build those performances, those are going to lead you into some release exercises where no matter how hard you pull on a barbell, a kettlebell, or a dumbbell to clean it or snatch it, the simple fact that you have to control the weight and decelerate it and or simply receive it is already going to cost us some percentage of maximal power output, because you're worried about controlling and stopping and maintaining the load being lifted. But if you could simply go through the preparation phase, the acceleration phase, and then in the follow-through phase, literally let go of that implement, you can produce maximal power output. The other way to do this would be to leave the ground, meaning jumps or bounds, plyometrics. Because we're dealing with aging bodies that are more than likely going to have osteopenia, if not full osteoporosis, sarcopenia, and if not a full atrophy of general daily use muscles, a decade or multiple decade history of sarcopenic effect, meaning the body's super, super weak and deconditioned. To have those individuals start jumping and bounding and skipping and depth jumping, it all sounds like a recipe for true disaster. Ultimate injury, impending. So our approach to this can be, let's train on our hydraulic or selectorized machines. Let's progress to free weights, master moving free weights through a really good multiple pattern range of movements. And then take some of those movements and allow the lifter to let go. This can be done in a multitude of ways. Number one being inside a Smith machine, utilizing a pivot point or a landmine or some type of fixed range that still allows for the freedom of release and a controlled return. Smith machine training, I think, is one of the probably the better points of entry with this, especially if you're going to do a row and or a horizontal push where there's going to become, we're going to allow the bar to release. That bar will be fixed through a range. Spotters can be present. Safety catches can be put into place. I think you have a multitude of ways there to utilize that machine to assist in developing some ultimate power output for sure. But even in that, we're going to be fixed, right? We're going to be inside a cage, inside a machine or a range of motion that's only going to allow us to go so far. So let's consider moving into the realm of kettlebells, sandbells, sandbags, puds, or as the Eastern Bloc used to call them, poods, and implements that as you accelerate through a range of motion, you can simply let go. And either in an environment like this where sandbags, sandbells can be hit on the ground and not do any damage to the implement or to the floor or the environment around it, or go outside or into an environment where you can throw into sand or onto grass, onto foam padding, whatever it is you might have. This is where true release drills really become exceptionally fun, but are probably going to give you the best return for your output. So our first rule of throwing implements, before we get into a couple of videos here, is rule number one: we never take your eyes off the implement, okay? Even if you're receiving instruction from your coach, a workout partner, you must always stay focused on the implement, or else serious injury can occur. This happens often, unfortunately. We the coaches assume that you're always going to do this, and so we will yell out instruction. Keep your chest up, or use your hamstrings more, or tuck that chin in, or whatever it is. And we've had people that will throw an implement into the air and then look to us for confirmation of what they just said. And the implement's in the air, like it's either coming back at you or it's going to hit some. Stay focused on the implement. Never take your eyes off of it. Rule number two: never attempt to catch an implement, even if it's designed to catch, unless you are doing a drill that is a catch and release drill. And I'll explain. If Keegan and I are doing medicine ball chest passes, throw, catch, throw, and catch, and we're trying to do hand-eye coordination, fast, reactive, and we're probably using like a 4 or 6 pound medicine ball, it's smooth all the way around, it's designed to do this, that's fine. Outside of that, anything else that you're throwing for maximal power output, which is what we're talking about here, full tilt, everything you got, you're throwing a sandbag in the air, do not attempt to catch that. We've seen fingers snapped. We've seen people yanked by their head. There's a famous video of 3 individuals. It says like, come try strongman training. It'll be fun, or something like that. And the first 2 gentlemen throw their sandbags in the air and they land. And the gal's the last one to throw it. And she throws it and looks at the camera, and it comes down and the handle grabs her around the head and yanks her off her feet by her head and just straight onto her back. And she got seriously messed up with a, I don't know, 20, 25 pound sandbag that she threw, fairly far in the air, maximal output effort. And that backfired hugely. I personally have seen individuals try to catch like sandbags or sandbells, and you've got handles and welds and all kinds of Velcro, all kinds of stuff, snap fingers, jam fingers, rip off fingernails, etc. Just let it hit the ground, properly pick it up and throw it back. Okay, that's what these things are designed for. They're not designed to be caught. And number 3, and probably the most important rule, and this comes from the world of throwing, is that it is your ultimate responsibility not to get hit. If I am throwing something and let's say I'm throwing it backwards over my head, from the moment I take a look to see what's behind me, and then I turn to set up to throw my sandbag, whatever's happening behind me, I cannot see. So if someone is walking into the sector, the area where the implement's going to land, and or if they're out there and they're just not paying attention and they get hit, that's not my fault. We have a general rule of understanding, and this is rule number 3. In our world, all of us here, it's rule number 1. But in the order of the book that I put them in here, it's rule number 3, is that if you get hit, it's your fault. It is your responsibility not to get hit, because the majority of people throwing can't see where the implement is going to land. If I'm doing forward chest passes, I can. But if I'm doing anything, a lateral hammer toss over my head, vertical over my head for distance, any of the ones we're about to show you, I can't see what's going on back there. So it is your job not to get hit. And if you get hit, you will be blamed. You will be blamed for getting hit. This is 100% your fault. We're all out here throwing things. We all understand that. And we are all agreeing, and good coaches will tell you this beforehand. It's going to be your fault if you get hit with this implement. So pay attention. We'll do our best, obviously. We're not going to aim for you, but like if you get hit, that's your fault. There are 2 other rather famous videos on the internet of one gentleman getting hit with a shot put, who is watching a race go by and gets hit with a shot put. He was injured. Another gentleman, tragically, in 1996 was killed by a shot put. Older gentleman, probably 80-something years old, was hit by a shot put and killed. I think that was in 96 or 92, one of the Olympic Games there at Sacramento State. We've seen people, and there are multiple videos of this, get hit with javelins and get pinned to the ground, goes through their shoulder, through their chest, etc. Again, and I'm not trying to be mean or make fun. It's your fault. If you're out there knowing you're in the sector, you got to pay attention. Okay, you got to pay attention. All right, We have a continued adjustment of lifts here, and I just wanted to provide you that really quick. Hinges and squats, pulls or rows, pushes and presses, split stance, loaded carries, and then we'll consider the last one some complexes or multi-joint lifts, and just gave you a progression of those going across, ideally from most simple to a little bit more dynamic. But again, any of these orders can be made a little harder, a little less. I just want to give you some direction so you've got some idea where you want to go. And some volume here, anywhere between 6 and 15 reps, 2 to 4 sets, 40 to 80% of your 1 rep max, etc. You see some of the tempos there, and I would take at least 30 seconds to 60 seconds in between sets to make sure you're fairly well recovered and ready to roll. Now, in sets of 5 or 6 or 7, you can give maximal output every single time and only lose, maybe 5-6% off the top end. When you get over 8, 9, 10, etc., you're still giving your best effort, but is it a maximal output? Once we get under about 90% effort, we're not truly getting great power. It's better to take a little more time to recover and do less reps. So 5, 6, 7, 8s, right around in there is like that good zone. I've done 5 of these or 6 of these. Let's stop and rest and do another set of 5 or 6 instead of one set of 10, where the second half of all my throws, I'm pretty exhausted and I'm not really getting the maximal output out of that. All right, to kind of finish up the chapter, we talk a little bit in here about selecting load, and in doing so, number 1, can you do all the reps we've asked? Very simple, yes. Can you do the reps we've asked with proper technique all the way through? So that number 2, very important. And then number 3, can you maintain the lifting tempo? That is probably the one that is missed or not focused on enough, is making sure that if we're looking for a 3-second eccentric, that they can do that for all 12 reps, all the way through with proper technique. If you can do all that, we're in good shape. If you can't, we got to change the load. We got to go lighter. All right, some release lifts, and we'll wrap up here in just a moment. Between the legs, BTL, between the leg vertical toss, between the leg forward toss, between the leg backward toss. Hammer tosses, rotating off to the side, up and overs like you're setting a volleyball. Slams, either kneeling or standing. Single arm shot puts, right and left. You always want to throw with both arms. Maybe even a little bit more, an extra set with your non-dominant arm, just to try to work on, seeking muscular quality, as we like to say. High pull releases and or high pull strikes back down to the floor, and then there's some basic volumes there for you. All right, so let's take a look at our first one here. Here's Elaine performing a pre-swing and a release. This is a between the leg forward toss. She gets a good toss, has a good solid gait, turns, pretty good proper pickup. She's gonna reset. We always start at the top. She's gonna pre-swing 1, pre-swing release as she tosses up into that big Y finishing position, and then repeats again. Notice the slower tempo in between. We're trying to get a maximal effort. She doesn't need to sprint after it. We're like, just take your time, go and get it, pick it up, and toss it back. In doing so as well, you can see the manipulation of this implement. This is a 3 or a 4 pound sandbell. This isn't super heavy, but she can move it rather dynamically, rather explosively, considering she's 80 years old and she's got scoliosis and her back is compromised and her shoulders are compromised. This is a very explosive component for her. We're not jumping, and we don't have drastic impact ground reaction back on the ground via flight. We have it via the acceleration of that load. So even though that's only 3 or 4 pounds, she has a lot of pressure. I don't know exactly without having a force plate. She has a lot of pressure applying back through the ground that is going to, for the most part, focus on her lower extremities and her legs, and put a lot of density pressure back through the bones and build a lot of reactive type 2 dynamic explosive movement patterns through the hamstrings, the lower back, the glutes, etc. Moving into Gary's position here. Number 1, notice Gary has bumper plates under the bell that he's slamming, because if we try to pick this up off the ground, he can't get down to it without rounding his back. So we bring the floor up to him a little bit. It gives him a target. It also establishes a wide base with his feet, and it allows him, as he picks up and delivers this blow down, a target to make sure he's striking straight down where we want him. It's not drifting away or going between the knees, okay, or between the feet. Every strike as he comes down here, he's trying to pancake that thing and smack it as hard as he possibly can. And we have a standing rule in-house is if you break one of these implements, you win a prize. I don't know what it'll be, but it'll be something amazing because we have yet to have anybody break one in there. So between the leg forward tosses or vertical, downward slams, now we'll work a little bit of horizontal. And these are some rather fun drills here. Joyce also has a vest on. You'll notice we're working on her sit to stands as well. She's got to get these good hinges, these good tosses. She's going to stand up, work on her gait a little bit as she transitions. You can see her arms out to the side. This is a little problematic for her. I come over, stack up the weights underneath for her. She does one little cheat. She does this underhand toss on this first one. And then I tell her, hey, we're not doing those guys, right? Those are techniques. You can do underhanded between the leg, but we're working the chest pass here. So she leans back, a little momentum in there, totally good. And I tell her, like, pretend I'm kneeling right in front of you. You got to throw it up and over me, just up and over me. So those places are like, oh, we have ceilings. It's only, we're 9 foot, 10 foot in here. Our gradual ascending roof as we go across, about 9 feet or so. Plenty of room for us to do standing chest passes, just until our clients say don't go any higher than your eye height. And we can work on some of these distances and throws in between here. All right, team. So I hope you enjoyed this and got some good takeaways. Just a little wrap up here. The neuromuscular power production, as we've talked about, is very good for posture, number one, for fall prevention, and that's the primary focus. Number two, keeping us on our feet, and if we do start to lose our feet, being able to react quickly and build enough strength through the eccentric training to be nice and stable. Ultimately, this should help people stay on their feet, improve their posture when they're walking, longer strides when they do so will definitely keep them in better, safer positions. Their ability to move at different speeds and tempos with different loads, with even weight, with uneven weight, etc., is going to help them in transitioning groceries and whatever else, walking the dog, anything else they do where they're going to have different applications of force applied to their body. Again, this will kind of roll into that first one of making sure they're neuromuscularly strong enough not to get yanked or pulled or overwhelmed, but to keep them up on foot in positions and reducing opportunities for more falls and injury. And this should be a daily practice that our older populations can continue to perform. We may just need to modify how we go about doing it. Maybe in the early days, we are in Smith machines doing more Adam Archuleta style of training where we're throwing the bar and catching it, throwing the bar and catching it, high pull release and catching it, up and over uprights with sandbags or kegs, and strongman style of training that progresses into throwing sandbags, slamming slam bells, and doing some chest passes out on the grass. There are many different ways to apply fast application of force, no matter what the age, no matter what the limitation. You just got to be creative in doing so. I'm Robert Linkul. Thank you for joining us today. If you need any other questions, anything else, feel free to comment down below. Please like the video, share, send it out with anybody you feel like could benefit from hearing or seeing this information. Make sure you hit the little subscribe button and join our community. Help us grow. We appreciate that. And any other questions about training the older adult, head over to trainingtheolderadult.com and we will help you out there. Have a great day. And until next time, continue to fight your good fight against sarcopenia. Take care.